is by the church, the head and members together. And the apostles, they have a choice. You can forgive sins or you can retain sins. How are they going to know the difference? They have to hear. They have to hear the person say their sins. They have to hear their sorrow. They have to hear maybe their lack of repentance, maybe to retain it. So that gift was given on Easter Sunday, the gift of God's mercy. But it doesn't stop there. 8 days later, of course, Thomas isn't there. The disciples say, "We have seen the Lord. Unless I see the mark of nails in his hands, put my finger in his nail marks, put my hand in his side, I will not believe." Pretty strong. But we would have said the same thing. Maybe. But thank God that Thomas wanted to believe so badly, he wanted proof. Because look what happens. 8 days later, the disciples were again, this time Thomas was with them. Jesus came, he opened the doors that are locked. "Shalom, peace be with you." Thomas. And of course, Thomas responds with the most profound proclamation of Christ's divinity. "My Lord and my God." And what can we learn from this? Sometimes we think in our sinfulness we are so unworthy. And we think that God will never hear our prayers. Or we think that God won't want to use us. We're not able to put ourselves in God's grace and be able to be used by God. But look what Christ did. He turned Thomas's unbelief and weakness into a proclamation of faith that has been sounded throughout the centuries for us to imitate. And Jesus doesn't tell him, "Oh, come on, Thomas, why didn't you have faith? Did you see me?" No, he says, "You've come to believe because you have seen me." That's good. Peter, John, all the other apostles, Mary Magdalene didn't believe until she saw Jesus. That's good. You are blessed. And they needed to see Jesus at the beginning of the church. And of course, we need to see him too. I'd like to see him. I'm not going to appear right there in front of us. What would you do if you saw Jesus? Jesus appeared right there, right on the first step. He appeared. Everyone saw him the same way, right there. And he said, "Hi, everybody, I'm Jesus. I'm here to celebrate with you." What would you do? Would you faint and run up and say, "Hi, Jesus, I'm so-and-so. Good to see you." I don't know. What would you do? And then he disappeared. And I would imagine that when we drive home, we say, "Wow, wasn't that great? We saw Jesus showed up. We saw him with our eyes." And then a few miles down the road, did you really see him? Was that really him? Was that a projection? Was Fr.Michael playing a trick on us or something? Was that really him? It looked like him, and then he just... We can't trust our senses. Our senses are not perfect. And we can see something that may help our faith, but Jesus says, "Blessed are those who have not seen and have believed." Why? It's because the gift of faith isn't from us. It's from God. And when He's given it to us, it becomes powerfully more present to us, and we can't doubt it. We can doubt maybe the information that faith gives us, but the faith that comes to us is from God. And it's an assurance. And even St. Teresa, the child Jesus, when she was suffering in her agony, and she wrote in her autobiography, she confessed that she was doubting that God ever existed because she was so overwhelmed with pain. But she said, "I'm not going to rely on what I believe, and if I can't believe now in my weakness, the church can believe for me." That's the power of our collective gift of faith. So blessed are those who have seen it and have not seen it, have believed. And Jesus did many other signs in the presence of the disciples that are not written in this book. But these are written that you may come to believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and you have life in His name. That's the whole purpose. But God is so good to us. In every age, He sends messengers. He sends Jesus Himself. He sends the Virgin Mary. In every age, to bolster the faith of the church in certain areas. Sometimes they become universally accepted. Sometimes they just become private devotions in the local area. individual gift that God gives to really build somebody up that they can become holy and a tremendous witness to the world. And that's the reason why we're celebrating Divine Mercy, because St. Faustina, Sister Maria Kowalska, Faustina, she had a private revelation. Jesus appeared to her. And if you read in her diary, when she wasn't even thinking about becoming a nun, and she was at a dance. She was dancing, this little innocent dance in the local village there. She was dancing about 19 or 20. She was dancing, and all of a sudden, Jesus appears to her, crowned with thorns and scourged. I mean, another way to ruin a party. But and I think Jesus did that to her because she probably knew that Jesus was calling her to a deeper relationship, but Jesus already knew that she wasn't ready to accept it. And Jesus appeared to her, not to shock her so much, but to show her the contrast between just a good worldly life, or good life, and a holy life. And to see how it's centered on His passion. And so she ran out of the church. Oh, before that, Jesus in the vision said, "How long am I going to wait for you? How long am I going to put up with you?" Imagine that. Jesus scourged her with His blood. How long am I going to put up with you? She ran out of the church, or ran out of the hall, went to the church, and she prostrated herself in the church. And then Jesus told her, I want you to become a sister. I want you to join the convent. She does. She joins Sisters of Mercy, I think. Sisters of Our Lady of Mercy. And she joined them, and then later on, as you know, with the Revelation, so Jesus started appearing to her more. And then after she became a sister, I believe it's in the late 20s, Jesus walked through her door, just like He did in the Gospel, and wore an ankle-length robe, and His hand was up in blessing. And the rays came forth from His heart. It's like He was revealing His wound to the disciples, His hands and His side. And He told her that He wanted an image made of what the vision she saw. And of course, He said that the clear white rays were the sign of baptism, the water, and the blood were the sign of the Eucharist. And this was the sign of His mercy that He's pouring out on the church. Now imagine this. This is in the 1920s in Poland. Everybody's Catholic in Poland. And Jesus tells Faustina things like, he was talking about the people in the city who were coming. They're all lukewarm. And He even said about the sisters that she was living with, I can't stand it when they receive me. They're all lukewarm. I'd rather come to you and not to them. A harsh language. But He didn't tell that to the other sisters. He told it to her because He wanted to show her the gift of His mercy. You don't think you need mercy until you know you're in need of mercy. And the only way that we're going to understand that we are in need of mercy is to see the bad news so we can rejoice at the good news. And the good news is Jesus is risen from the dead and He's here to give us His mercy. And so He also told her, as you know, put Jesus, I trust in you at the bottom of the image. So whoever looks at it or puts their trust in the Lord in that way, in veneration of His image, they'll receive special gifts of mercy and forgiveness, and also protection. And there's many stories that are connected to that. But in the second reading, it's very important for us also to understand the book of Revelation. It's the beginning of the book of Revelation. And John has this vision